Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Sarah Betteridge, and I'm a psychologist working in Elft NHS for the Tower Hamlets BME Access Service. And as part of this role, I've been working with the East London Mosque and the Mariam Centre, and they've asked me to put together a video on helping people to cope with anxiety during these difficult times. I'll be working through a document created by Psychology Tools throughout this video, and then I'll spend a few moments thinking about anxiety and spirituality, and then at the end of the video I'll give you some further information on other helpful services. Most of the information that I'm sharing with you today is primarily taken from the document called Living with Worry and Anxiety Amidst Global Uncertainty by psychologists Dr. Matthew Wally and Dr. Hardeep Kaur. A link to this document will be available alongside this video on the website. There are some ideas from this document attached that are good for all of us that are going through this situation right now. And there are some ideas which may be helpful if your anxiety is very strong and negatively impacting a significant amount of your day. Firstly, it's important to note that worry and anxiety are perfectly normal emotions that every one of us will experience at some point in our lives to some degree. But particularly during these times, it is normal for us to all experience an increase in our anxiety at points. Being able to think ahead and plan things is a really important skill that we all need. But when thinking ahead leaves us feeling anxious or apprehensive, it can start to become a bit more of a problem. Normal amounts of worry can help us to problem solve, they can help us to get what we want or what we need. But excessive amounts of worry can leave us feeling demoralised, exhausted and upset, and really start to have an impact on our daily lives. When worry or anxiety become excessive, we can also start to feel it in our bodies. Muscle tension or aches and pains, restlessness and an inability to relax, difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, feeling very easily fatigued and exhausted. Anxiety can come in forms of thoughts, feelings and behaviours ranging from mild to moderate through to the more severe. Some mild to moderate symptoms may be things like some difficulty sleeping, having some worrying thoughts, finding it harder to relax, becoming a bit more irritable. More severe symptoms may include having very little break from extremely worrying thoughts, feeling extremely scared, having obsessive or controlling thoughts and behaviours, and experiencing panic attacks. Anxiety can be thoughts or images that get progressively worse and usually end with thinking about catastrophic scenarios. Most of us may have experienced some anxiety recently. I certainly have, when I caught a cold a few weeks ago and I became worried about the symptoms. I was checking my temperature all the time. I was wondering about who I'd come into contact with and worried that I might have passed it to somebody vulnerable and that they may get very unwell and possibly die. Those types of thoughts could have further progressed into imagining that many of my clients, colleagues, loved ones may all get the disease too and die. When these types of thoughts become uncontrollable and affect our daily lives, then we may be struggling with anxiety. Before we move on to some of the coping strategies, it would be important for us to think about what type of worrying thoughts you're having. Are you having worrying thoughts that are about current situations or worrying thoughts that are about future hypothetical situations? So, for example, are you worried that you have very little food in the house and no means of getting any more? That would be a current worry. Or are you worried that you may lose your job because of what's happening and then become financially destitute because of that? That would be a future hypothetical worry. You can use the worry decision tree in the document attached to help you think about what types of worries you're having. If you find that you're having more of the hypothetical, future-based worries, then it would be important for you to remind yourself that there's very little that you can do about those types of worries at the moment, and that you need to distract yourself using some of the techniques we're going to go through from those types of hypothetical worries. If you have worries that are very current and happening now, then you may need to be doing some problem solving and asking people to help you think about how you can solve these problems. I'm now going to talk through 6 different approaches and things that you can try that can help you to manage anxiety and overall well-being during these difficult times. Number 1 is about having a balance of 3 different types of activities in your week and in your day. Activity number 1 is the type of activity that gives you a sense of pleasure. Activity number 2 is the type of activity that gives you a sense of achievement. And activity number 3 is the type of activity that gives you a sense of closeness or connection to others. You can check out the Look After Your Wellbeing by Finding Balance handout and the activity menu handouts for more information on the types of activities that can make you feel good, give you a sense of meaning and purpose, and help you to feel close and connected to others, even if at the moment that's online or over the fence or at a distance. Number 2 is giving yourself a set amount of time to worry. Now, this might sound strange at first, but worry can be very forceful and it can make you think about things all day long in a very unhelpful way. And by experimenting with limiting that time and say giving yourself 20 to 30 minutes a day to do the worrying, it can then free up the rest of your day to do productive things that make you feel better and make you feel good. You can see the worry postponement exercise on the document attached to help you with this. Number 3, this is my favourite, and as a psychologist, this is the one that I would really encourage all of you to think about. Speak to yourself with compassion. Being hard on yourself when you're struggling with huge amounts of anxiety, or being hard on someone else when they're struggling, will often make you and them feel a lot worse. A traditional cognitive therapy way of dealing with negative, anxious, or upsetting thoughts is to write them down to help you find different ways of responding to them. You can use the Challenge Your Thoughts with Compassion worksheet on the document to help you to do this. It's amazing what responding to your thoughts with compassion and kindness can do. It's so powerful and it's much more effective in helping you to find a different way of thinking about things than by being hard on yourself. Please give it a try. Number 4 is a series of exercises. Deep breathing and muscle relaxation techniques can be really effective for managing the physical symptoms of anxiety. Distraction techniques can be really effective for managing some of the mental and cognitive symptoms of anxiety. And mindfulness techniques are highly effective ways overall of coping with emotional and psychological distress. It helps you to come into the present, to acknowledge your feelings and be able to manage them in a very mindful way. Typing any of these methods into a search engine will bring up lots of activities and teaching you how to do these skills. It is important to set aside some time every day to practice learning these new skills. 15 to 20 minutes a day on any of these skills will be really worth it and bring about some really good results. Using distraction techniques, breathing and relaxation techniques, and mindfulness techniques are all skills, and they take the same amount of effort as any new skill, like riding a bike or learning to drive or learning to cook. You need, the more time and effort that you put into those skills, the more you'll get out of them. Practicing them when you're not feeling anxious is really helpful, so that when you are feeling really bad, you've started to build up a skill that you can use when you are feeling really bad. So setting aside a little bit of time each day, 15 to 20 minutes, particularly when you're feeling good, to practice these skills will help you in the future when your anxiety is really high. Number 5 is to notice the things that tend to trigger your anxiety. Mindfulness can help with this, but it's really about starting to connect when you start to feel anxious and what happened just before that. And this can be really helpful for you to start to limit the things at the moment that are triggering those anxieties. So, for example, if watching lots of news about the current situation really increases your anxiety, try to limit that. And also try to stick to reputable sources. There's a lot of fake news that's out there at the moment, and that increases people's anxiety levels unnecessarily. So try to avoid the fake news and stick to reputable sources. But even with the reputable sources, try to limit the amount of time. Just watch enough to get the information that you need and then move on to something else. And finally, number 6. It's absolutely normal for all of us to have an array of emotions during this time, from feeling overwhelmed, anxious, bored, stressed, calm, peaceful, sad, and sometimes more than one at a time. And it's really important to acknowledge how you're feeling. Don't push it away. Talk about how you're feeling. Ask other people how they're feeling and give them space to express how they're feeling. And try to create a well-being plan for you or your family. That may include some of the things that we've already spoken about. It's also good to have some kind of routine, so either sticking to one that you had before or creating a new one. Trying to get up and go to bed at regular times, have a shower, get dressed, do your hair, brush your teeth, do the normal things that you would have done, do the dishes. Keep physically and mentally active. And also think about the things that you are still able to do. You might want to start a gratitude journal to really help you think about what are the things that I am still able to do and that I'm grateful for each day. Praying, reading the Quran and doing dhikr with the intention of easing symptoms can also be very helpful. I hope that you found some of this information useful. If you have a friend, relative or loved one who's struggling with anxiety, then you can also use this document to help them and use some of the tasks to help ease their anxiety. As Muslims, it's important for us to think about our relationship with Allah and the Deen, and these difficult times often give us a good opportunity to do that. Emotions such as anxiety are really helpful because they let us know that something's wrong. This is a perfect time to connect with our spiritual heart, the qalb, and our soul, the nafs, and think about how they're doing. Because if we're struggling with anxiety, it's likely that those parts of ourselves are struggling too. And there's lots of spiritual practices that can really help us with those things. Speak to Allah about the anxiety that you're feeling. Ask Him to help you to understand where it's coming from and why it's affecting you so badly, and what you can do to start to recover from the anxiety that you're feeling. When you speak to Him and make dua to Allah, you might want to use some of His names, particularly if you're talking to Him about anxiety, such as As-Salam, the source of peace, As-Samad, the satisfier of all needs, Al-Mani, the protector of harm and the preventer of harm. These names really help us to put our anxiety into perspective and think about how Allah can help us and protect us from these things. Remember to seek protection from the whisperings of shaitan, because he will be wanting to make those anxious thoughts much, much worse. Doing tasbih can help calm the spiritual heart, but also help with some of the physical symptoms of anxiety by regulating your breathing if you're doing it in a very calm, rhythmic way. Praying 5 times a day can obviously give us a structure to the day, but it can also act as 5 rest points of your anxiety and having a break from your anxiety during those times of prayer. And I pray that all of our hearts benefit from the peace that descends in this blessed month of Ramadan to help us with our anxieties. The Mariam Centre reception number is still running and taking calls from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. They are offering befriending services to vulnerable women and senior citizens, food bank services, and their women's counselling service is also still running. Imams can be contacted through the East London Mosque reception number, as can burial arrangements, and people can also speak to the imams for bereavement support on the East London Mosque reception number as well. If you're no longer able to cope with your anxiety, then you might need to speak to your GP or any other mental health issues that you may be going through. You might need to speak to your GP. You could try accessing online counselling services for anxiety or other difficulties. But if it becomes really intolerable, you could call the Tower Hamlets crisis line on 0207 771 5807 for help and support. And carers, friends and relatives can also call on your behalf to get advice as well. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it's been helpful. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.